Uh-oh.
Okay, we'll start with this. We're about 4 weeks out from the Taylor vs. Serrano trilogy, and on that undercard, we're going to be seeing the United Kingdom's own Ramla Ali return to action more than a year out from her last fight against Brazil's own Leela Furtado. And make no mistake, this is a sink-or-swim fight for Ramla. Sporting a professional record of 9 wins with 2 losses, no draws, 2 knockouts, having been knocked out once in 11 professional bouts. 35 years old. To Leela Furtado, who is 34, and both fighters are orthodox fighters. Leela sports professional record of 11 wins with 2 losses, no draws, 2 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 13 professional bouts, and she's been in there with the likes of Raven Chapman, with the likes of Karis Artingstall. They could not put Leela away, so it's safe to say that Ramla won't either. Ramla is not a knockout merchant. And those fights were up there at feather, whereas this fight is at super bantam. Leela will be moving down in weight for this fight, coming off of 2 consecutive victories over 2 debutantes. Last in action, in December of last year against Giselle Libanio. She won a unanimous decision against in an 8-rounder. This fight with Ramla is also scheduled for 8 rounds. Whereas Ramla has not seen action since June of last year, her world title bid against WBC champion Yemi Mercado, who will also be boxing on this show in a unification match with Ellie Scottney. Ramla's going to be making her most valuable promotions debut opposite the ring Leela Furtado, but they could have found her someone easier to fight, somebody who is a bit more manageable. I saw both of Leela's fights with Raven Chapman, with Karis Artingstall, both in the featherweight division, and she's an aggressive customer, better than her resume suggests. She was able to put the both of them on their back foot, and that was at a higher weight. So it's safe to say she's gonna come right at Ramla Ali, who will not only be shaking off ring rust, a year's worth of it, but she will also be breaking in a new trainer, as she's not training with Manny Robles anymore. She has enlisted the aid of, get this, John Ryder. He's training fighters now. He's training Ramla now. And I can't tell you that that's an improvement or a setback for Ramla Ali. All I can tell you is that when John was an active fighter, he was a very different fighter to the fighter that Ramla Ali is. Ramla, at her best, is a mover and a jabber, a boxer, not a bruiser, not a brawler, like John was. Not a pressure fighter, so when he's training fighters, I don't know what his philosophy is going to be. We're going to find out next month on the 11th, and as stated, this is not a gimme fight. It's not a given that Ramla wins. This has the look of a sink-or-swim fight, that if she is going to be promoted by MVP moving forward, she has to earn it. She has to make it past Leela. And even if she does, she's still campaigning as a super bantamweight. So you've got Ellie Scottney unifying titles with Yemi Mercado on the undercard. I expect Ellie to win that fight, and then after that I expect her to target the winner of Flores versus Romero too, the winner of that fight to complete the set and collect all the belts. Back over to Ramla. Well, I don't think Ramla beats Ellie Scottney, but I don't think she beats Mayeli Flores or Nazarena Romero either. I think that Ramla's best bet to get at a title is to wait the situation out between the champions. Let an undisputed champion be crowned. Go ahead. And after that champion moves up and goes on to do other things, then maybe you fight for a title, because you won't win one from Ellie, you won't win one from Miele, and you won't win one from Nazarena. That's the cold, hard truth. I'm a fan of Ramla, but I am also a realist.
Ramla doesn't win those fights.
Now, what she can do in the mean-in-between time while the champions are settling up with each other is she can continue to fight and continue to win, continue to participate in eliminators that line her up for a title.
Get in position.
She can do that. Ramla is a good fighter, make no mistake. She just campaigns in a very deep division where there are a lot of talented fighters and a lot of talented champions. It's not easy to win a belt at 122, and that's the moral of the story. She has to take her experiences from the two Julissa Guzman fights and apply it to this fight, because Leela, in some ways, is a similar fighter to Julissa.
She's an aggressive customer and a hard puncher. Not big on fundamentals, but big on physicality.
So we'll see how Ramla makes out. Elsewhere in the world of boxing, it would seem that former champion Devin Haney is going through some baby mama drama. He took to his Instagram stories and said, "Stop using kids to control men, or as a come-up. The kids don't deserve that. I never acted like my kid didn't exist. I fight to see my baby. My child's mother won't let me see my baby unless I threaten to cut her money off. And I'm tired of having to pay to see my child every time.
I said this would happen.
I am going about it the right way, through the courts, so that it's organized and I can see my baby more than one time a month when she needs her bills paid. I've been trying to keep this off of the internet, but it looks crazy. But I won't let my child's mother make me look like something I'm not, especially when it comes to my child. I'm not with her, and haven't been with her for a while now, but still took care of her as such for the sake of her being my child's mother. Whatever she has against me, she makes my daughter feel it by not letting me be in her life." Well, I warned.
I took one look at that broad that Devin Haney got pregnant, and I knew this was coming.
See, that's a problem with a lot of athletes that have a lot of money, but not a lot of charisma. They end up pulling these broads that they would not otherwise pull if not for their economic standing, and they think these broads are with them because of their looks or because of their personality, because they're such a go-getter, when they're just waiting for that moment where you make a mistake, you slip up, you put a bun in the oven, and for the next 18 years, she's got you by the balls.
Now understand that Devin Haney's kid was just born not that long ago, which means that things would have went sour between them not that long ago.
So many times for so many years we see athletes and rappers make the same mistake, sleeping around with the exact same women, because she's also linked to some musician, some rapper, Young Slug or Rich Homie Pacifier, whatever the hell the guy's name is.
Pork chops and applesauce.
Devin is an idiot. If you want to have your fun with this broad, you can do that, but putting a bun in the oven, that's just cavalier. That's just callous. That's something...
That's what she was waiting for. There's an entire culture built around trapping athletes into situations like this one. We're talking about collegiate footballers and basketball players, in some instances boxers, like Devin Haney. And this happens often enough. There are enough horror stories out there that Devin should have known better, if nothing else, his father.
Doesn't Bill Haney claim to have been a pimp with hoes on a track and all of that stuff? You didn't warn your son?
Devin is seeming more and more a square to me.
She's gonna stretch his wallet to where he'll be a rectangle soon. And it doesn't help his situation that whatever money he planned on making in the Ryan Garcia fight, the rematch, is now gone in the wind, as is the Teofimo Lopez fight. That would have got him paid too.
Last night, Richardson Hitchins called him out after stopping George Kambosos, but let's be honest. You don't make with Richardson Hitchins what you would have made in that Ryan Garcia rematch or that Teofimo Lopez fight unless Turkey takes an interest in making this thing, then maybe you're back on top.
But Turkey LL Sheik did say that he's no longer interested in Tom and Jerry kind of fights. Guys who are just going to run around the ring and make the other guy chase them. And that's what Devin did with Jose. So who's to say that Turkey wants to use him at all moving forward? Bill Haney seems to have had a meeting with Eddie Hearn earlier today.
They still have a functioning, working relationship to some extent.
In spite of Devin Haney's temper tantrum, I forget what fight it was, he wanted to get in for free and he was angry that Eddie used all of his tickets for his Matchroom fighters, for fighters that are signed to Matchroom. I remember Devin had a tantrum about that.
I think that was either the Fury versus Usyk rematch or the Joshua versus Dubois fight. It was one of them.
Eddie is now Devin's best bet to get in a bag and to get in a fight in the not-so-distant future. Who against? Maybe Richardson Hitchins, but I, as a consumer, as a boxing fan, am not interested in seeing two fighters with that base style fight each other, and for no belt at all, because remember, Devin's at welterweight now, and he's not a champion up there. If Richardson Hitchins moves up there to fight him...
You know what? Boots is about to move up to 154. He's about to drop the two titles that he's got at 147. Maybe they can work it out to where Devin and Richardson Hitchins fight for one of those belts. Though, if they do, there's not a lot of merit to that.
Not a lot of substance. Devin's not a champion at welterweight, nor has he fought one. And Richardson Hitchins would be a newbie to the weight, so that if these two guys end up fighting for a belt, it's as political as...
It's a paper champion.
That's what the winner of that fight would be in that scenario. A paper champion.
Yeah.
Sort of need each other at this point because Devin has been frozen out by all the other quote-unquote cool kids, and Richardson Hitchins was never on their radar to begin with.
They may need each other, but do we need this fight?
Looking at 175, Eddie, we've got obviously Benavidez, Bivol. Right under that, we've got a crop of title contenders, especially out of England. The one that I'm going to ask you about is obviously Callum Smith, rumored to be taking on David Benavidez. What's the status of that fight and what's going on with Callum Smith right now?
So we've had an offer from PBC for Callum Smith to fight Benavidez. We're negotiating with them at the moment. It's a great fight, and we all know that Benavidez is a great fighter. You know, it's not an easy fight at all. Callum was the Ring Magazine world champion at 168 pounds. He'd love another shot at the title. There's no easy championship at 175. You know, you've either got Bivol or Benavidez. So there is a very good chance that Callum will take that fight against Benavidez, and we'll be making our decision over the next 1 or 2 weeks.
That has to seem music to the ears of the David Benavidez faction of fans that haven't had a whole lot to talk about the last few weeks. Beating that dead horse about Canelo Alvarez, it's grown a stale conversation.
There's nothing to add to it. They are no longer in the same division. It's painfully obvious the fight between them is not going to happen, and David and his fans need to move on.
Callum Smith.
Well, I can only tell you now what I told you before. While I am not against David Benavidez landing this fight, and while I do view Callum Smith as a credible opponent for him, I'm not sure that Callum will take the fight, because you're talking about conceding home field advantage to David Benavidez, who you're going to have to knock out for a win.
You won't get a decision.
You're talking about fighting for just one alphabet title instead of 3 against the winner of Bivol versus Better Beef 3. You're talking about fighting for X amount of dollars in America as opposed to Y amount of dollars perhaps in Saudi for a big Saudi bag.
One fight pays better than the other, and on that predication, I'm skeptical as to whether or not Callum would take it. The only reason I can think of that Callum would take it is maybe he views David as being more beatable than the winner of Better Beef versus Bivol.
If he's got it in his head that he stands a better chance against David than the winner of that fight, then maybe on that premise he'll take it. But the money, one fight pays better than the other.
Why am I so sure?
Why am I so sure that one fight pays better than the other? Well, the PBC have very limited resources these days. That's why they don't do as many shows as they used to. And what kind of offering would they make to Callum Smith with those limited resources? Benavidez versus Smith in America is not a big fight. Commercially, it does not do a huge gate. It does not sell a bunch of pay-per-views. If when Canelo Alvarez fought that same Callum Smith, back when Callum was unbeaten, back when he was a champion, if that wasn't a huge deal when Canelo did it, it doesn't now become a huge deal when David does it.
Not after Canelo beat him, and or to a Better Beef knocked him out.
Do you understand what I'm talking about? I'm talking about the commercial value of the fight. Because based on the commercial value, that's what the offer is going to be based on. And Benavidez versus Smith in America is not a hot ticket. it's not a huge fight.
And so I don't expect them to make a huge offer to Callum Smith. That's what fuels my skepticism.
I was never against David Benavidez getting that fight. I was just skeptical whether or not he would get it, and I'm still skeptical.
Now, if things fall apart between David and Callum, I expect David to move up the cruiser shortly after that and make it his mission to land the Zurdo Ramirez fight, which is the fight I think they've always been after.
Why?
This fight between David and Callum would presumably be going down in either the fall or winter months of this year, while Artur and Dimitri fight for a third time. But if negotiations break down and he can't get Callum in the ring, what the hell is he gonna do?
If negotiations break down, who the hell is he gonna fight?
I think Callum Smith is a credible opponent for David Benavidez. I think that is a good fight, but not a big one. So I don't expect that they would have made Callum a big offer, and that is my rationale. Now, if they can get it over the line, and they can do it, it is interesting. Because I think punch for punch, Callum is a bigger puncher than David. He has more knockouts as a light heavyweight than David does, but David is a more prolific puncher within a round than Callum. He's a combination puncher, throws punches in bunches, crashes the pocket, lets his hands go.
He presents the same style to Callum Smith that John Ryder presented to Callum Smith, except he's a bigger guy than a John Ryder.
For David Benavidez, the plan has to be crashing the pocket, controlling the action on the inside, and backing up Callum Smith, forcing him onto his back foot by smothering those long arms of his. Don't let him get full extension on the arm, because that's how he generates that devastating power. David has to bully him and back him off.
Callum has to create space and keep it. Callum has to beat those feet, move around, and give himself enough room to throw, because David won't give it to him. David's gonna try to crowd him.
So Callum's got to use that jab to keep distance and create it long enough to bring either the backhand over or the catch and shoot left hook.
Catch and counter.
Those are two very good punches for Callum Smith in this fight. David Benavidez, when closing the distance, often gives his opponents both shoulders. He squares up.
So that if you catch this guy with a backhand while he's doing that, he won't have his back foot behind him to brace his fall, and he'll go down. He's gone down 2 times already.
Separate strategy. Employing the catch and counter left hook as David crashes the pocket and tries to throw combinations, you can theoretically catch him in between, but you have to take your chances. You can't get gun shy like you did with John Ryder, like you did with Canelo.
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. You have to take your shot if you're Callum Smith.
The short version. David has to close the distance while Callum has to keep it.
And that's if they actually fight.
And now for the irony that so many of David Benavidez's fans like to tear down Canelo Alvarez's resume and what names are on it, when those names would literally be the best names on David's resume. What's the best name on his resume now? Caleb Plant? A guy Canelo knocked out.
Look at who he's fighting now, who he might be fighting. Callum Smith? Nobody was shouting it from the rooftops when Canelo beat up Callum Smith, but they're gonna shout about it now when David fights him.
It's funny how that breaks down, all fuckery aside. It is a good fight. This is a credible opponent for David Benavidez in the interim.
No, I don't actually think he's waiting for the winner of Better Be versus Bivol 3, even if he does fight Callum. I still expect him to move up the cruiserweight shortly after that.
I don't think it was ever his mission to face the winner of that fight, but still, Benavidez versus Smith is intriguing, it is a good fight, and if they make it, I'll buy it.